Here at Men of Iron, we are just committed to telling stories. So we had an idea. What does it look like from a woman's perspective? We tell a lot of great faith stories here. And so we were just really intrigued by this idea of what's it like and how does it impact the people who follow along. So we have a really special guest today. I'd like to welcome Nyasha to the podcast today. We heard her husband's story, Cesar's story, here on the pod. And we're just really intrigued by, what that looked like for you to walk alongside that. So we're going to get started, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your family, and maybe your beginning of your faith journey.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah.
So I am from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, not too far from here.
Yeah.
I was raised in an amazing Bible-believing church, went to Bible college, part of a church plant, and the Lord led me back to school. So I went to Lancaster Bible College, got my master's in counseling, and along that way, I met an amazing best friend, and her brother from California decided to come visit, and it was in the middle of COVID. He thought he was just coming for a 2-week trip, but then he ended up visiting the Bible college and getting a scholarship and was just able to stay.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, we started dating, and 3 years later, we are now married.
Yes.
So that's how we met, and we've been able to just journey through a lot together. And now we're living in Elizabethtown, PA, just kind of, it was just us, moving there, and we're able to go to my home church again, which is a blessing.
Yes.
But it's been a journey for him moving from California to Pennsylvania because all my family's here.
Yeah.
But he's pretty much alone. His sister has gone back, my best friend. His brother lives in Maryland, but it's still not close enough.
Yeah.
So, it's just us building our life here in PA.
Yeah. I was really intrigued by this idea that, he was coming and decided to stay kind of. I loved the part where he's like, I had my crib, I had my job, I loved that so much. So that was really cool. But I guess, just kind of expand maybe on, what it was like to kind of walk with him as I don't think he was new necessarily in his faith because it sounded like he had some foundations in that, but could kind of have walked away. And so what's it like from your perspective, to walk alongside him in that journey, even like the beginning, like dating stages and then through marriage? I'd love to hear how, just your side of that.
Yeah, so I realized that we grew up in 2 different churches where he's had an amazing church and amazing family that are Christians, and my church is very missions minded and just very strong in convictions, like outwardly, like let's go, like save the entire world. And for him, he's like, I'm not getting on a plane. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to Africa. And it's hilarious because I'm like, don't say don't, because God will change your mind. And we're actually planning on going to Africa next year with our church.
Oh my word, that's amazing.
So super cool. We've also been to Romania. But it's just really amazing because I was able to say, like, hey, even if you don't think this is what's for you, like, this is what I do, and you don't have to do it. Like, you can go at your own pace if this is what you want to do. He really doesn't like flying. He loves people, but doesn't like flying. But I just think, like, that's a good example of his heart, and he's so open to God. Like, okay, I didn't really want to go on a plane, but I'm willing to go if God presents this opportunity to me. So he's actually been a help to me in that area of, like, just prayer and spending like super intentional time together with the Lord. Because I was just used to, of course, as a single woman, like this is my walk with God. Like I'm going to have my devotional, my prayer, but it's all very close to heart. And with him, he was like, let's pray. Like all the time we're like praying on the phone when we're dating. And I'm like, who is this guy? He is amazing. And we were just attending church. And sometimes like, I just knew I had to go to church. Like that was just ingrained in me as a child. But things happen and you can just feel like, well, I don't want to go today. This is just not what I want to do. And he'd be like, well, we need to go to church. Even as we were dating, he was showing that like Christian leadership that a husband would have. And it was obvious. I knew he was the one I wanted to marry, but it's just been incredible to like be under his leading in the dating like world and then also moving into engagement and just how he really considered like we started going to counseling, like premarital counseling. I think we had been dating for like 3 months. I definitely pushed for it. I'm a counselor.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But he just was always so willing to go wherever God led him, which means wherever God led us.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Men of Iron podcast. Anchorman Bootcamp is perfect for your men's small group. This 5-part video series will give you the basic skills you need to better connect with God, a clear and doable plan for spiritual growth. Lead an Anchorman Bootcamp with a group of like-minded men in your community or church. It transforms your small group into better leaders and protectors of those they love most and makes spiritual growth less boring and more doable. Find out more at menofiron.org.
Were there any times, did you feel like that Cesar was, in a season of struggling or anything like that? And how did that make you feel? Or, what as a wife or even a girlfriend, were you able to do as far as just to offer encouragement and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so he went through some pretty hard times, and it was mainly death in his family. Okay. So his grandma died in California. That happened, and then I think it was 6 months later, his uncle died suddenly, and he was going to be in his uncle's wedding, the best man. So that was really hard. It was really hard for me because I've never walked with someone like that closely who's suffered like that. And he was like, I need to go home. I need to go see my family, obviously. So, but he was here. He was, like I said, we were attending Lancaster Bible College. So it's kind of like, what's going to happen? Like, are you going to come back? So that was definitely hard for both of us. But the only thing I could do was just pray for him and encourage him and remind him of his calling and like that God had called him to school at that time. And obviously to our relationship, but I still was like, if God calls you back home, like I can't stop you from that. But God's called you to start school. Like, do you really think it's his mind for you to stop school? So that was a time he did come back, obviously. But he was able to be with his family and just, comfort them. And it was good.
So getting into a little bit of kind of what Men of Iron means, to your family. What was your introduction to Men of Iron? Was it something that Cesar brought up, or was it, and you were kind of like, what? Like, I don't know. Just if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe.
Yeah. So Colton Herb actually brought it up, and I was like, what? Like, what is
Colton.
This? But I more was like, what is this? That's so cool. Like, I want something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
It's really cool. And I was like, there's a workbook. Like, oh my gosh. For Anchored Man, but Colton had shared with us that he started working at Men of Iron and just that it was a Christian nonprofit and everything that they were doing, and we were just so like excited for him, number one. And then he talked about Anchored Man and said, hey, do you want to be a part of it? And it was kind of like for Junior, like I call him Junior, but Cesar, he was like, okay, it's like these Mondays, and then I'm like, okay, we have plans this Monday, we have plans that, which honestly I'm like, I need to like let that go. Like this was something that was important to him. He wanted to support Colton, and I was excited for him, but then also kind of like, okay, what is this thing going to be?
Right. Yeah. So was there anything that you noticed as far as like, once he started doing the program, or just, anything that you can kind of speak into as far as from your perspective as walking alongside Cesar as he does, the program and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I first noticed his excitement. Yeah. At first he was nervous a little bit. And then he started to become excited. Okay. Like, I'm meeting with these guys. It's really cool. Like, and he told me, like, I can't tell you about what we're talking about. And of course, I'm like, I understand confidentiality, but I'm like, what happened? Yeah. But he was like, I can't tell you exactly what we talked about, but I can say, like, these men are opening up, and it's really cool. Yeah. Like, it's a really cool connection. Yeah. So I noticed that he appreciated that and the genuine, like, conversation that they had together.
And I think for women, it's so easy to make those connections. And so that's one thing that, from working here, it's like, it's very obvious that guys struggle with that. So I think, it's pretty cool that they were in these groups that were able to make those connections. And then you tie in the leadership and mentorship piece of that. Yeah. I mean, did he ever speak to that, or was it, as far as like the being comfortable to open up to
I
a
think
group of guys?
He definitely spoke to it because, like I said, he's from California. Yeah. So moving from California to Pennsylvania, he has his boys back home, but like finding that close group of guys here, like it did take him some time. It was different. So he was very happy. And like I said, we just recently moved to Elizabethtown, so he didn't have many connections.
Right.
And I believe like this really helped him grow more connections.
Yeah. Finally, I mean, I really feel like you did an amazing job kind of, just speaking to Men of Iron and what it meant to your family. I guess I'm super interested in what kind of encouragement that you could give, to women who may be listening to this because they're interested in supporting their husbands and they want to walk alongside. And, what does that look like from your perspective if you could encourage a girlfriend or a wife that's, walking alongside their husband?
Yeah. So I would say first and foremost, it's a great thing and don't hold him back from it.
Yeah.
So like I shared, like I was kind of like, okay, every Monday, like we have plans every other Monday. We have this other thing that we're doing. But just seeing the value in it and that thing that you're supposed to be doing every other Monday can wait. I think the program was like 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So you can give him that time. You can give him that space to connect with these men, and it's going to make him a better husband, a better father, a better boyfriend. It's going to help him in his walk with God, which is ultimately going to help you. Not that we're out of our going for our selfish motives, but it's going to be better for you and your relationship and your family.
Yep.
So I think like whatever it takes to allow him to do it, if he wants to do it, let him. Like it'll be great. It'll only produce good things.
Yeah.
So
no, I love that you actually spoke to that because people kind of ask me like, you work for a men's ministry? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Because I don't think, we realize that when we have these men who are committed to making themselves better and leading well and doing all those things, the ripple effect that it has on their families and their communities and their, places that they work, all of those things. Did you notice that in Cesar, like at all, as far as, obviously I know I said we're going to wrap up, but like, I'm just so intrigued by this idea of like this ripple effect or whatever.
So I think the biggest ripple effect I noticed was like, of course, his connection with other men, but also his mindset of, I don't have to have like an hour to spend in the Word of God. I don't have to have my perfect space, like my Bible out, my devotional here, like the candles lit. Not that he likes candles, but you know what I mean. Like for us, we want the whole like
have the whole ambiance.
Mood. So I think this really showed him like if you have 5 minutes, give it 5 minutes. And that's great. Like, and you can go back and have that hour-long devotional later if you have time. But honestly, we don't all have time for that. So I think a big takeaway from this was like, I can spend time with God in those small moments. And I think that's really helped him.
Has it opened up even conversations between you two about your faith? That's another thing I think that couples struggle with, even, dating couples. It's, this idea of being willing to share. And has it led to conversations, more faith kind of conversations or?
Yeah, it has. And I think the workbook, which I like wanted to look through, but I didn't look through once he started writing it. In the beginning, I did. But I think it intrigues you and makes you want to have that deeper conversation. So he would say like, we're talking about this topic and then we could talk about it. And like, what do you think about that? So I do think it did open up more conversation.
Well, thank you so much for taking time and coming and sitting with us. And, I loved Cesar's story. I was, like I said, I loved the parts about him being like, I'm not sure about this, and getting on this plane. I love that his sister like bought a ticket. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. There's so many things I love. I love that you were her best friend. I think that's pretty cool, and how God's, weaves our stories together, that kind of thing. So I do really appreciate you being here. Any final words that you can give us?
I love it that you work for the men's ministry, and I love that you're here doing this podcast. So I think keep doing what you're doing. And I'm very grateful for Men of Iron.
Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. At Men of Iron, we exist to change a culture one man at a time, and we'd love to have you partner with us. So go to menofiron.org to see how you can get involved, or donate at menofiron.org/donate.